What's up guys, First Hand Account here with another video. Sorry about the mic being in frame. I know a lot of people don't like that on YouTube, but I'm just trying to figure out a way to film me talking to the camera and then me also editing on screen. Today we're going to be going over my black and white editing technique, basically what I do in Lightroom to achieve the black and white look that you guys see on my black and white page. I get a lot of questions about this online, and I just got a comment on it in the last video that I posted. So to everyone who's watched that video, thank you so much for watching. To everybody who's subscribed because of that video or because of one of my earlier videos, or if you're a new subscriber, my name is Tyler. I go by First Hand Account online, and I basically make video content about street photography, Leica cameras, because I'm obsessed with Leica cameras, a little bit of urban landscape photography and fine art photography. I do a little bit of stuff on video as well because I have a digital agency that does a lot of video production work. But yeah, that's me. So let's get right into this real quick. So I have a few photos pulled up in Lightroom right now that I really think show my black and white editing style the most. So let's reset this real quick. And you'll notice that the photo is in color. I shoot with black and white on my Leica Q. I've gone over the settings that I use on my camera in a previous video, but basically I see everything in black and white when I'm shooting it through the viewfinder and things like that. But when I pull them up in Lightroom, I always have the raw file as well. So it saves a black and white JPEG, but it also gives me a raw file with all the colors. So that's why when I reset these photos, they look color, if you guys are wondering why that's happening. So the first thing I do is I switch it over to black and white. I have a lot of presets on the left that I use to achieve certain looks that I've saved in the past. So I've definitely, developed a certain look, and I've saved them as presets. I will sell them on my website. If you guys go to the link in the description, the black and white presets that I have just went for sale with this video. So all the presets that I'm talking about inside of this video will be available on my store. Just click below and all the information is down there. So the first thing that I like to do on the black and white images is I just adjust the exposure. So the exposure was actually pretty good. I might bump it up just a tiny bit and then leave it. I go to contrast next. I think the contrast is fine the way it is. I set it to a really high contrast profile when I shoot the photo, so it already has a little bit of contrast on it. The highlights aren't blown out. The blacks are peaking in this area right here, so I'll probably raise the blacks up a little bit. I'll probably raise the whites up a little bit as well, just right before it starts peaking. And then I actually go in and I add a lot of clarity. I also like how the highlight was the most visible thing in the frame, the thing that your eye goes to first. And the shadows, there's not much going on there. So with an image like this, I might actually take the shadow slider and drag it down to kill a lot of that information, and then drag the blacks down a little bit till I start to get some peaking. And then what I'll do is I'll go into the tone curve and I'll drag this up so that it's not as harsh and it's not as dark. Right there, the contrast isn't as dark. Maybe raise up the mid-tones a little bit just to bring the guy out. Raise the highlights up a tiny bit as well, just to further accentuate that contrast going on. And then I might drop this a tiny bit just to kill those shadows. So then on the black and white mix, a lot of people don't touch this when they're editing black and white photos, but I think it's really important to go in and actually play with these. So this is your individual colors and the exposure or the luminance of each one of those colors. So as you see when I drag the sliders, we're getting a lot of difference in these areas. When I drag the yellow slider and when I drag the orange slider, it's hitting a lot of those same areas, but it's not hitting some of those other areas that the yellows were hitting, like the guy's bike. If you go into blue, that's of course your sky. So if you've ever seen somebody kind of really drop the sky down, sometimes they have a really heavy vignette on the photo, but sometimes they're just dropping the luminance of the blue tone down because the sky is blue in color. So when you're dragging the luminance down on that color, it'll just bring the exposure of it down and kind of give it that, like, I don't know how to describe that look. It's kind of like a haze, like a dehaze filter look. So I really like that, honestly. So I'm probably going to keep a little bit of that in there. And then last thing I'll do is just straighten the image. And then if there's something in the ground that I don't really like right here, you can come in and just brush this out. A lot of photographers don't do that. Sometimes I don't do that at all, but you know, every once in a while I'll go in and just remove like a rock or something really distracting in there. And then the last thing I do is just crop it. So I don't really like how this is bringing your attention away from the guy with the bike. So I'll probably move this in until this line lines up with the guy. There's still a little bit of negative space for this car, and then it cuts those trees out. So then you're not getting as much of that, you know, your eye isn't sitting on those trees coming into the frame right here. So yeah, that's probably how I would edit this image. We'll move on to the next one real quick. So this is another one I shot. We'll just reset it. So that's the color raw image. And then the first thing that I'll do is just go into black and white. This one didn't actually need that much touching up. So this one I didn't go super creative and super crazy with the edits. I kind of just cleaned it up a little bit. So I'll probably just adjust the exposure to bring it up slightly. And then I will adjust the black point so that we're not getting clipped blacks. Bring the whites up until right before they clip. Probably bring the shadows up a tiny bit, or actually I might leave those down, and then I'll bring the highlights down too, just so these areas aren't as bright and as white. Another thing that you can do right here is, because you have the luminance of each color, you can bring the yellow and the orange down, and that will bring a lot of these rocks down in exposure, make them a lot less distracting. The yellow is hitting more of the road, but I think if we bring that down a tiny bit as well, it'll just add a lot to the image. I always add a little bit of clarity just because I like the contrasty punch. Maybe add a tiny bit of contrast. I might drop the shadows down a tiny bit and then kill those blacks a little bit as well, just because I like how when the car is disappearing into nothing, it kind of gives this mysterious vibe to the photo. And then we can come in and raise these blacks up on the tone curve, bring up the mid-tones and the highlights a little bit, and then just bring a little more contrast into the shadows by bringing those down. And we got, you know, this really mysterious kind of look here. Another thing I might do is add a radial filter around the car. And then what you can do is you can bring the exposure down of everything around the car. And that will make the car pop a lot more, make people's eye go to the car a little bit more. And then I might bring back a little bit of those whites so your eye just goes right to the car. That's kind of all I would do to an image like this. I might drag, you know, we're getting a little bit of peaking on the whites right here, so I might drag that a little bit down on the top point of the tone curve right here, just to, you know, kill those whites and make sure they're not clipping out if we decide to like print this later or anything like that. And then the next image that I'm going to do is this one. So this one I pushed pretty hard. If you see the original, it is, you know, not a lot like the edit itself. So we'll go over kind of what I did for this edit and, you know, how I kind of isolate a subject when I'm shooting through glass. So again, the first thing I'm going to do is switch it over to black and white, and bringing the exposure up a little bit just because he is not really well exposed. I don't mind if these white areas up here are peaking, just because, you know, they're not super interesting information. I like the shapes that the white is making, and it's, you know, when you're working with black and white, you can get away with a lot more in terms of clipping the whites or clipping the black point and making sure that the image still looks pleasable to the eye. If you do a lot of these things to like color images, it will look ridiculously crazy and unnatural, and I don't recommend doing that. But on black and white images, you can definitely get away with a ton more. So moving back to the image, I'll drag the contrast up a little bit just to bring more attention to him. We have some blacks clipping, so that's okay. Like I said, you can get away with a lot more on, you know, black and white images, but I'm still going to drag those up. Shadows I might drag up a tiny bit. Highlights I'll drag down a little bit, and you see how much of that clipping went away when I just dragged down the highlights a tiny bit. Add a little bit of contrast through the clarity slider, and then a little bit of dehaze. And then what I'll do to offset that, because you saw the exposure of the guy went down a little bit, we can bring these blacks up, which will seem, make the image seem brighter, and drag a lot of these shadows up very slightly. And then what we can do is raise the midtones up and raise the highlights down, and then kill these a little bit, and you're starting to see a little bit more of the look that I was trying to go for, trying to get right on this guy, and bring all the visual attention onto him because he is the subject. And then with the crop, I went with a 4x5 crop for this one because I think I posted it on my Instagram. And then we can come in and really shape the image the exact way we want. I think I ended up with a crop like this. And then the last thing I did was I actually added a little bit of vignette to this image just to really push all your attention onto the center area. I kind of like where that is at right now. I might bring the exposure up a tiny bit, right about there. And yeah, I'm happy with that. That's before, that's after. So thank you guys so much for taking a look at this video and for all your feedback on my last video. I really appreciate it. I wanted to give you guys these presets, so if you want to buy the presets, the link is down in the description below, or if you want to just watch this video and copy exactly what I did and make your own presets, that's fine too. But if you purchase the presets, it really helps me out. It helps me to keep making these videos for you guys. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you guys are enjoying your day, and as always, thank you so much. Peace.